What's up guys, it's Eli and welcome back to the channel for another PreSonus Faderport 8 and Luna video. We all know that Luna only supports the basic functions like volume control, panning, and the transport controls for control surfaces, but we can only hope that the bigger features like edit plugins and send controls are coming soon. When Universal Audio first released the control surface support for Luna, they dropped the video showing us exactly what was possible in Luna using control surfaces. And they briefly touched on some of the bigger features that were not available and that they were waiting on us, the users, to let them know which features that we'd like to see coming next. I think it's pretty safe to say that edit plugins and send controls are coming soon. But what about all the other features that your control surface may have that they may not be thinking about just yet? As you guys already know, I use the Faderport 8 by PreSonus, and I think it's an amazing piece of gear. And it actually has a lot of features that are specific to Studio One, but I think Universal Audio can take advantage of all of those features and bring them into Luna to take full advantage of this piece of hardware. Now there's 8 specific buttons on the Faderport that I want to touch on today, and each of those buttons have dual functions. And there's also a lot of function keys that are in the Faderport, and so far I only know of 2 of them actually works, and that is F1 and F2, with F1 being the command to toggle back and forth between the mix view and the edit view, and F2 is used to spill the master bus. And the Faderport also has 4 user assignable keys that I don't think are being used at the moment. I would love to be able to customize all of those keys to be able to take full advantage of what the Faderport can do. But most importantly, I want to show you guys how I would like for those 8 buttons to work with the Faderport and Luna. Before we jump into the meat of this video, if you're finding it to be useful, make sure to drop a like and comment down below to show your support to this channel. And if you're new, don't forget to hit on the subscribe button and turn on the notification for more videos like this. Now, let's get to this video. So starting on the left of the Faderport, you will see the bypass button, the macro button, and the link button. And all of these buttons have dual functions. Starting with the bypass button that is here, this function is plugin specific. So I think it should bypass the plugin that you have in focus at the moment. And when you do Shift All, or the secondary function for this bypass button, it should bypass all the plugins that are currently in your session. Moving right along, we have the macro button. Now, this one is a little backwards to how I'd like to see it set up. When you do Shift Open, I think it should open up the workflow mode that Luna has. If I take my mouse and I go over here and I do this, it brings in focus my workflow mode. Now at this point, once I have it open, if I just hit on macro, I think it should toggle in between one of the 4 different modes that Luna has. And moving right along, we have the link button. And I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I don't know what this button should be used for. If you guys have any idea, drop it down in the comment section below and we can discuss it there. Now for the secondary function, Shift Lock, I think that function should lock the position of your faders. That way, after going through a long session of mixing, you don't have to worry about accidentally moving a fader on your Faderport to ruin your mix. So Shift Lock should be used to lock the position of your faders when you're satisfied with your mix. And now we're gonna move right over to the right side of the Faderport. Next to the navigation controls, we have 5 buttons, and just like the previous 3, all these 5 buttons have dual function. And I'm gonna explain what I think each of these functions should be used for. Starting with audio. Now in Studio One, these buttons are specific to Studio One based on the Studio One console. Now, Luna does not have all of these same functions, but it has similar functions that I think can take advantage of what these buttons do, right? So in Studio One, these buttons bring into focus the specific tracks that the button is referring to. For example, audio hides all the other tracks and focus solely on the audio tracks, which is kind of similar to the spill feature in Luna, except the spill feature is derived from the bus versus the type of track. So in Luna, what I think this button should be used for, and it's the same for the top 3 buttons, the audio, VI, and bus. I think these buttons should create their respective tracks, right? So if I hit audio, it should create an audio track, or at the very least, it should bring in the menu to create the track. Just like if I were to go over here and click on this track, select audio, and it brings me this menu. And same for VI for virtual instrument, and bus for bus. Now, the secondary function of these keys, I think, should be used as follows. Input should bring up the input for the selected track, where I can either use the pan or perimeter knob to select the input that I want to use for the specific track, or I can use my mouse to select the input that I want. As an example, if I toggle over to my print track, I select this. With this track being in focus, if I hit shift input, it should bring in this menu, right? We're on input, it brings in this menu, and I can select my track either using my mouse or using the pen parameter knob. And for MIDI, what I think it should do is create a MIDI region. I don't have a MIDI track on this session, but let's create one real quick so we can see what I'm talking about. So if I were to create a track, instrument track, we're just gonna name it instruments. Now I have a track. If I double click on the timeline, it creates a MIDI region. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit, so we can expand that. And depending on what you need the MIDI region for, you can expand it to the specific length that you need it to be. Moving right along to the secondary function for the bus button, I think this function should be used very similarly to what the input function does. Right now I have the instrument track that we just created selected. If I hit shift output, it should bring in the output controls. So I can use the pen parameter knob to select the output that I want for this track, or I could just use my mouse, just like the input. That's what I think the output function on the bus button should be used for. And the last 2 buttons are where things kind of differ a little bit. Now, currently Luna does not support VCA tracks. Obviously we can't use the VCA button to create a VCA track, but what I think it can be used for is to group tracks. Right now, if I do shift select, I can select a group of instruments, and if I move the faders, this group is gonna be moved together. But this is a temporary group, and sometimes you may need to have a more permanent group. Well, not necessarily permanent, but a group that's always gonna be there. For example, if you're mixing a track that has 2 snares, you may want to create a balance between those snares, but once you get that balance in, you probably want to treat those tracks together by moving up and down the volume depending on where you want it to sit in the mix. Same for a kick, or maybe a bass DI against a cab. Having multiple tracks for instruments like this that needs to be treated as one, you might want to have groups that are more permanent. The secondary function for that is effects. Now, this kind of plays to the edit plugin function, but let me show you guys how I would like for that to differ. Now, for edit function, it would basically bring all the controls for the specific plugin that you have open to the faders on your Faderport. The effects button, on the other hand, would bring up the menu. For example, I have my mix bus selected, and I need to bring in a plugin to that mix bus. Obviously, I already have a plugin I already have a few plugins on there. So if I do edit plugin, what I want is to have all the plugins available on that track to now be displayed on the scribble strips here, and I can select the appropriate plugin that I want. Let's say I don't have a plugin on this track and I want to add one. What I would do is select the appropriate slot that I want the plugin to go to, hit shift effects, and that would bring up the plugin menu like so. And from here, I can type in whatever plugin that I want and bring it into the track and bring it in focus. And now all those settings are routed to my faders and I can start mixing. I know that's a little bit much, but if properly implemented, I think that could work. And lastly, we have the all button. Now I think the all button should be used to toggle between volume control and the gain control, the trim control to do gain staging with. Now, by default, your Faderport is always gonna be on volume control. Now, if I just do all, it takes the faders and move it over to control the trim. So that way, when I'm moving my fader down, I can do gain staging. Gain staging using the Faderport would be a whole lot faster than trying to gain stage using a mouse. So I'm sure Universal Audio already has thought about this and they are working on implementing a way to do gain staging using a Faderport control. But I think this is the way that I would like to see it done. As long as it's there, I'll be satisfied. So fingers crossed that it is coming soon. The user function for this key is, as it says, a user function. It should be mappable to whatever the user want it to be mapped to. Same as there's 3 user functions that are in here under the touch, write, and read. I think these functions should be mappable by the user to whatever they want it to be. And of course, the actual function keys that are in the navigation area that are currently not mapped to anything. So if we could have the ability to map those to whatever function that we want to, I think that would make the Faderport the best device to use with Luna so far. I have never used any other control surfaces, but I love the Faderport 8. I'm sure the other surfaces are great as well for their users, but I know the Faderport, and so far it does an amazing job with working with Luna. So if we were able to customize all these functions to whatever we wanted them to be, I think that would be great. That is it for this video. That's all I had on the Faderport and how I think it should be mapped out to take advantage of all its functions with Luna. Did I miss anything? If you guys have anything that I did not go over, make sure to drop it down in the comment section below and we can discuss it. And don't forget to drop a like and comment down below to show your support to this channel. And if you're new, don't forget to hit on the subscribe button and turn on the notification for more videos like this. I'll see you guys next time in the next video.